For October 30th, 2002, Biography with Harry Smith.
John Ritter. This versatile actor's success has always come in threes: on stage, film, and television. Actor John Ritter is no stranger to the world of TV, having been a staple of the sitcom for nearly 30 years. This former Three's Company star is up to his usual hilarious tricks in his new show, 8 Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. The show premiered last month on John's 54th birthday, giving Ritter and his fans a wonderful gift.
John is walking funny. He embodies funny.
He talks with his body. He makes fun with his body, and it just flows out of him.
He's one of the good guys. He's one of the people that you root for.
A lot of people think that my sense of humor is my best asset.
They're wrong.
Thanks.
John approaches physical comedy like a dancer. He works it out like a dancer would work out steps.
He achieved both comedy and drama superbly well at a very high level, and that's something that he should be very proud of.
Oh, the boll weevil lamb, a little black bug, come from Mexico, they say. Come all the way to...
Tex Ritter was the singing cowboy of movie westerns of the 1930s and 40s.
Far across the sea.
It was 1938 when he rode off into the sunset with actress Dorothy Faye Southworth in the movie Rainbow Over the Range. Dorothy was Tex's leading lady in the movies and in life.
I can't figure you out.
Well, do you want to figure me out?
In 1941, they married and settled in Southern California. They had their first son, Tom, in 1947, who was born with cerebral palsy. Then, on September 17, 1948, they brought their second son home from the hospital. They named him Jonathan Southworth Ritter. Growing up in suburban Los Angeles in the 1950s, John and his brother were fascinated by their father's line of work. After all, how many other kids could say their dad was a singing cowboy?
Don't try that again. And if the lady wasn't present, I'd drill you right out of that saddle.
My brother would say, "Come on, Dad's on TV," and we'd go down Saturday morning and watch Dad, you know. He basically was himself. His name wasn't Tex Ritter. He always had Tex something. It's Tex Williams, Tex Reynolds.
Well, I'm Tex Reed from the State Marshal's office. I'm to report to you.
By the 1950s, Tex's movie career had faded, but he was still a big draw on the country and western circuit. Appearing as America's most beloved cowboy, Tex sometimes brought his boys with him. More often than not, though, he'd leave them at home with Dorothy, who'd given up her movie career to raise her 2 sons.
My father's career was very similar to a traveling salesman. He traveled an awful lot, performing for concerts, rodeos, and things like that. So there was a great deal of time that my mother was the only parent at the house with us.
When John's mother was in charge, things were much more whimsical in the Ritter household. His father was thrifty and practical, but John's mother, Dorothy, was glamorous, free-spirited, and free-spending.
My mom was a little bit like Auntie Mame and Glinda the Good Witch, sort of mixed together. She was a loving, loving woman, and my father tried to explain this to me at one point, and my brother, that she just didn't know about money. She would not pay a bill, she'd forget about it, and then give the guy, like, you know, fruit.
Now, Dorothy was the belle of the ball. You know, she was somebody with these big hats. She was like a Southern belle. She was a character, larger than life.
John, you know, from her got this incredible style about how you know, the playfulness with which you respond to the world. And I think from his dad, he, you know, took in a humility about how you don't get too high, you know, on the horse. You know, you could be down on the ground the next day.
Who is your favorite guitar player?
You.
Thank you. Who's your favorite man?
Tarzan.
Tarzan. What about me?
They never wrote a book about you.
His timing is a little off tonight.
Early on, making public appearances with his dad, it was easy to see that John was a born entertainer and that he was comfortable in front of an audience.
John was a goofball. That's what somebody said. You know, John was a clown. Perhaps sometimes he felt as though that was his role and he probably would have liked to not have taken it, but he was very good at it.
When they were young, John took on another role with his older brother, protector.
Sometimes he took the role of the older brother. That's not true. Maybe all the time he took the role of the older brother and was really very protective of me in situations where maybe there was a fellow who wanted to bully me around, and he would intercede and not let the guy do that.
He could so easily have just walked away, because people walk away from families all the time, you know. With or without a disability, they walk away. They don't pay attention.
The same year the Beatles burst onto the American music scene, 1964, John entered Hollywood High School. He immediately became a fan of the Fab Four, an interest he shared with his new best friend from public speaking class, Joe Landon.
I had seen him on campus, but didn't really know him, and he came in his clothing didn't really look like a teenager's clothing. It sort of looked more like I Spy. It was just odd. And he would get up and do improvisational speeches or whatever, but I found myself laughing. And the teacher, she was losing control of the class and would come down on me. And it always happened that I would get in trouble, and John never got in trouble.
John was popular enough to be voted student body president. He graduated in 1966 and planned to attend the University of Southern California, USC, the following fall. But first, there would be more antics with Joe Landon. It started with a trip to Hawaii in the summer of '66, when a friend's mother sent their names into the dating game, and they were both chosen to be on the same episode.
Number 3, make the sound of a musical instrument that best describes your personality.
That's Coleman toilet paper.
In spite of his smart aleck answer, the Bachelorette found some redeeming quality in John, and chose...
Bachelor number 3.
Number 3, all right.
He took the opportunity to ham it up.
This gentleman is majoring in drama, did a fine job of inventing a wedding for you. He likes baseball, he enjoys traveling, real all-American things, an all-American kind of guy, Mr. John Ritter. John, say hello to Sandy. Boo! Well, every year, Sandy, the name...
They ended up winning an all-expense-paid romantic trip for two
to Lake Havasu, Arizona. That's right.
In the fall of 1966, John entered USC, where he met a woman who would change his life, Academy Award nominee and legendary acting professor, Nina Foch.
He's one of my most memorable students, one of my most satisfying students, because anything you gave him to do, he could do it.
In Foch's class, John did improvisations, one funnier than the next. After one especially amusing performance, the teacher took John aside.
She said, "You're funny. You know that?" And I went, "Oh, thank you." She said, No. Do you know you're funny? You can really make people laugh?" And I went, "Well, sometimes." I said, "No, but you know you're funny." I said, "Well, yeah, I guess so." And she said, "Okay, here's your assignment. From now until the end of class, don't be funny."
I remember telling him, "You're wonderfully hysterical, but you need to stop doing that. You need to dig in and get the depth of you, the real you in there, so that you have them both, because, of course, things are much funnier when they are terribly true and quite deep."
Soon, John began to take theater more seriously. One of his performances as an epileptic magazine salesman in the play Chuck by Jack Larson attracted notice.
When he did the play Chuck, I saw what depth he had. It was phenomenal. The depth of him as an actor, because he was basically a comedian, as I saw, and his instinct is to be funny.
My sister was in the audience, and she came afterwards, and it was like, "Well, what'd you think?" And she said, "You were good, but that John Ritter, he's going to be a star.
In the late 60s, John traveled twice to Scotland with his school's acting troupe to perform at the prestigious Edinburgh Festival. He was in several plays written by Jack Larson, who had played Jimmy Olsen in the 1950s TV series Superman. Larson became a trusted advisor, even if some of his advice was unsolicited.
I knew absolutely that John had a big career if he played his cards right and if he took care of himself, and he had a tendency to gain weight, get a little pot belly. I said, for God's sake, take care of your body, because you don't want to be fat. You can be a romantic leading man. Even if you're a comic, you don't have to be Fatty Arbuckle. You can look great, and so don't gain weight. This is the best advice, because it looks to me like you're gaining weight. Don't gain weight.
By now, Tex, Tom, and Dorothy Ritter had moved to Nashville, where Dorothy became the official greeter at Opryland, and where Tex waged a campaign for U.S. Senate in 1970. He lost, but his son's star was just beginning to rise. That same year, John graduated from USC with a degree in drama and began pounding the pavement looking for work. Tex had tried to steer John away from acting. He knew how hard that life could be, but John was determined.
You know, he made the seamless transition from being a non-professional actor, college student guy who loves to do political theater and improvs and stuff like that, into the business, and it sort of happened, you know, magically. As his friend watching him, I thought, oh, this is how you do it. You just sort of do what you do, and then the world comes along. Of course, it's more complicated than that.
John's very first TV role in 1970 was that of a student revolutionary in a series called Dan August, starring Burt Reynolds. On that set, John met actor Norman Fell, who would co-star with him years later in Three's Company. And he became fast friends with actress Jenny Sullivan.
John and I played these sort of, you know, radical hippies on a campus. You know, we're, you know, starting fires and, you know, protesting. And I can't even remember. I remember something about ducking behind some car or something.
Peace, man. So funny. Hey, pig, you ain't got nothing on me, bummer.
2 years later, John got a recurring role as a preacher on The Waltons, and his father, Tex, a big fan of the show, finally accepted the fact that John was going after acting, and there was no turning him back. An experience they had over Christmas vacation, 1973, nailed it.
They were talking to each other, and all of a sudden they heard this woman, Mr. Ritter, I really enjoy your work on television, I really enjoy it. And she ran right past Dad and went up to my brother and said, I love the Waltons, I love your role in the Waltons. And after John signed her autograph and she walked away, John turned to Dad, and Dad was laughing. You know, it was almost like the torch had been passed from one generation to another.
Now it was John's turn, and his big break was coming. By the early 1970s, John Ritter had entered the Hollywood workforce and had begun making a name for himself as an actor. He had just started attracting notice for his role as a reverend on the Waltons when he received tragic news from home. His father, legendary singing cowboy Tex Ritter, had died. It was the first week of 1974.
What happened to my brother and me is people would come up to us and say, your father's was like a father I never had. Your father told me the greatest lesson in my life. Your father bailed me out of jail. Your father gave me my first break. Your father changed my life. Your father introduced me to my husband. And it was just so stunning to me how quiet my father was about all these little intimacies and miracles that he had made just out of being who he is.
That touched us so much because those people we had never known, and perhaps Dad never talked about them that much, but he had such an impact on them and their lives.
Armed with the wisdom and humility of his father, and with an agent, John pressed on in search of roles. He continued playing Reverend Fordwick on the Waltons, and he landed work on other TV shows. Though John didn't know it at the time, one particularly memorable cameo he'd done back in 1970 would ultimately lead to the biggest break of his career. He had played a preacher on The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
I was in tennis whites. I was just out of seminary school playing tennis when they asked me to come over and marry Ted and Georgette.
I promise to try to always make you happy, because you always make me happy.
Good. That's nice. Go back to me.
Well, that was really sort of thrilling on another level because he was playing with the big boys there. So to be able to work with Mary Tyler Moore was huge.
The show's producer was Mary Tyler Moore's then husband and partner, Grant Tinker. As one of the most powerful players in the television industry, Tinker had the power to launch an actor's career with a single decision.
To have Grant Tinker focus any kind of attention on you was a huge deal because it didn't go any higher than Grant Tinker. And Grant Tinker took an early interest in John Ritter, and he cast him in The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Rhoda, and that just added to the buzz on John Ritter. So by the time the mid-70s came around, he was already a name.
Soon, a top executive at ABC wanted to give John a shot at a lead role. In 1975, the Wright Project came along. It was based on a British series called Man About the House, featuring a young man sharing an apartment with two attractive young women.
Good evening.
Good afternoon.
John beat out 50 other aspiring actors, including a young Billy Crystal, to win the lead role in the American version of the show, renamed Three's Company. And John's personal life was going just as well. In 1975, he met and fell in love with Nancy Morgan.
She was working as a commercial actress, and she was getting parts in films and stuff like that. And it was interesting. I mean, they were both sort of trying to get into this world together, and he found somebody with whom he could share his passion for that world, as well as clearly who shared some of his deepest values about family. And I think Nancy understood a lot of what it was he was seeking in terms of creating a family.
Okay, eggs, butter, mushrooms, an onion.
John's professional life was taking off. In Three's Company, he played an aspiring chef named Jack Tripper, who shares a Los Angeles apartment with two beautiful women, played by Joyce DeWitt and Suzanne Summers.
Now for my special touch, I'll need some breadcrumbs.
I think I have some in my bed.
Never mind. I'll make my own.
That co-ed living arrangement was still considered risque in the mid-1970s. So to help the landlords, Mr. and Mrs. Roper accepted, Jack Tripper pretended to be gay.
Are you crazy moving in with two girls not in my building?
Wait a minute,
at all?
it'll be strictly platonic.
Well, I don't care what it is. What does that mean?
Like you and me, Stanley.
Come and knock on our door. Come and knock on our door. We've been waiting for you.
When it premiered, March 15th, 1977, the show was almost identical to its British cousin. And it turned out viewers couldn't get enough of it. Three's Company quickly became a Tuesday night staple, and Jack, Janet, and Chrissy were adopted as America's darlings. A number of critics dismissed the series as mindless drivel, but agreed that one of its most endearing qualities was John Ritter and his immense talent for physical comedy.
Well, I think John Ritter was really the heart and soul of that show. Let's face it, those scripts were not highbrow. The way that show succeeded as a comedy show was through John Ritter's physical comedy, and he was really a master at that. I don't think it's a stretch to say to compare him to Buster Keaton. Certainly not a stretch to compare him to Dick Van Dyke.
He talks with his body, and he makes fun with his body, and it just flows out of him.
When it comes to comedy, I don't think there's a better physical comic in the world than John. I mean, he can do pratfalls that just floor you. I mean, he's wonderful.
John approaches physical comedy like a dancer. He works it out like a dancer would work out steps.
It was a show that people could tune into, you know, whether you were a kid or a kid at heart, and escape your everyday sort of problems and watch these three wacky people sort of bounce off the wall. And most of that credit, a lot of that credit goes to John.
John didn't amuse only television audiences. Behind the scenes, he often had the show's cast and crew in hysterics.
You'd be talking to the director about something in a scene that didn't work and trying to figure it out, and you just kind of turn your head, and he'd be over there in your eyesight when you moved your head, waiting, doing some hysterical thing endlessly until you would turn your head. He was willing to wait in order to give you the laugh.
John is walking funny. He embodies funny. He's funny from his mind and from his body. You know, he can be, just use his body and he's funny. That is a rare talent.
One of the antics his castmates remember most fondly is John's habit of humping.
He's a humper. He was probably a dog in another life, you know, and it's just second nature to him.
You know, a curtain. I mean, really, draperies on the set. I mean, the things, that was why I was so hysterical. You can't possibly do that to that particular object, but John would be, and you'd turn your head and there he'd be, and the fact that no one on earth would have thought to pull that was a part of why he would laugh so hard, but yes.
In September 1977, Three's Company returned to ABC's regular fall lineup. 1 month later, on October 16, 1977, John married his girlfriend, actress Nancy Morgan. Now he seemed to have it all: a hit show, a beautiful wife, and a cast and crew that loved him. John Ritter had arrived.
That is your room, and this is our room. One false move and we take you right to the vet.
In the fall of 1977, things couldn't have been going better for John Ritter. He was newly married, and his new ABC TV show, Three's Company, was a hit. Those who know John Ritter, the actor, say his role as a klutzy chef, sharing an apartment with two beautiful women, was a good fit.
I think Jack Tripper was a perfect role for John to play because it let him use so much of himself. Because there are moments where that character, the character of Jack Tripper, is such a loving man to these women that he lives with, that he cares about them so much. And that part of John is just as real as the part that is so funny.
John as Jack Tripper was so popular because he was so good and he was so likable and lovable and safe. He was safe. But I think the most important thing was the chemistry. The chemistry was awesome. The chemistry between John and Joyce and myself really worked.
John had been working as an actor for years, and now he was an instant celebrity. It was odd for someone so private to be thrust into the public eye. And with the dazzling success of Three's Company, John's image was everywhere, on coffee mugs, posters, jigsaw puzzles, and countless magazine covers.
I think what happened to all of us as a group, it just blew our minds that the publicity was so intense. So I think we were all kind of blown away by this focus that was on all three of us.
I think it got tiresome. In the beginning, he was just endlessly giving. I think over time, he wore him down. He became more selective.
The celebrity stuff is completely empty. Now, it's nice, some of the perks of being a celebrity and all of that, but I equate it for being out in the sun. It's very, very warming and nice, and sometimes you get a nice glow, but if you're in the sun for too long, we know it can kill you.
The glare of celebrity did have its effect on Three's Company. The cast had been getting along famously until February 1978.
Newsweek came and wanted to do a cover, The Phenomenon of Three's Company, and it ended up being a very sexy cover with John and Joyce leaning in from the side and John leering at Suzanne's cleavage. And when they were doing the photo shoot, John and Joyce were sort of like, you know, what's going on here? Because Suzanne was being asked to, you know, walk up close and pull off her robe, and they thought it was going to be something different.
To this day, the Newsweek debacle is a touchy subject, but at the time it was reported that he and Joyce were angry over being portrayed as secondary characters.
I was the one in the teddy, in the sexy teddy. Now, in perspective, from my adult self today, I look back and I go, if I was the photographer, I'd probably put the girl in the sexy teddy in the middle too. I think that did create some ill will, but it wasn't my fault.
In spite of all the tension behind the scenes, John was about to hit a new professional high. In 1978, he made his dramatic debut in the TV movie Leave Yesterday Behind, starring as a polo player who's paralyzed in an accident.
That can't be because after I fell, I got back on the pony. We won.
Also in the wake of the Newsweek article, Three's Company won a People's Choice Award and rose to the top of the ratings. It did wonders for morale on the set. In time, the Newsweek controversy died down and the cast made up. In fact, one favorite behind-the-scenes moment came almost a year later, during the taping of the episode, A Camping We Will Go.
We're in this tent in the camping show. Suzanne and I are in there, and we're waiting for John to come in. He's going to crawl in the other end of the tent.
Oh, come on!
We hear the dialogue outside the tent. We're waiting, and somebody had a gas attack in the tent. I can't remember which one of us did, but someone did. And so Suzanne and I just sat there gripping onto each other, knowing that he was about to crawl into the cloud.
See, I think it was John Ritter who passed away in the tent. He tried to blame it on either Joyce or I, but I think it was John. Just wanted to clear that up.
With the 1980s came more work and more honors. The head of ABC tapped John to co-host the network's annual cerebral palsy telethon with his pal, Henry Winkler, and his wife, Nancy Morgan. It was a cause close to John's heart, since his brother Tom had cerebral palsy. For the next 18 years, John helped raise millions of dollars for CP research, and in the process, he and Henry always had fun.
Relax, trust yourself, be natural. Take 56, Winkler.
When an issue is important to him, and that certainly is an important issue, he just goes in big time. So I think that's the place where being a celebrity is important to him, because I think he feels like he can make a difference.
In 1980, John formed Adam Productions with his business partner, Bob Myman. Their first special, Being of Sound Mind and Body, was the first of many that showcased John's comic talents. Among his guest stars, Suzanne Summers.
Wait! Seriously, what would you like to talk about?
Well, I'm interested in the women's movement.
Great. I'm interested in the men's movement. A lot of people think that my sense of humor is my best asset.
They're wrong.
Thanks.
That same year, John collaborated with Joe Landon, his best friend from high school, and Bob Myman on The Comeback Kid, about a down-and-out baseball player.
I don't care about the game. I just kept thinking, I'm hanging on. And maybe it's time to let it go. Why don't you go into the bedroom and lie down, all right? Sweet.
On the set of Three's Company, another problem erupted in 1980, this time over money, when the series got a $100 million syndication deal. Suzanne and her husband, who was also her manager, wanted 10%. Tensions built up on the set in the wake of her demands.
I think by that point, John was so angry, he was ready to move on and do the show however was necessary to do his job.
They sort of like gave the network an ultimatum, and they said, pay us more, pay me more, Suzanne Summers, I'm bigger than the rest of the show.
The producers eventually wrote Suzanne out of the show. She left in 1981. By now, John and his wife were the parents of a young son, Jason, and had another baby on the way. It was a stressful time. John was juggling fatherhood, telethons, movie roles, theater roles, and a hit show whose future was now unclear. Three's Company did go on, with a new set of faces, actresses Jenny Lee Harrison and Priscilla Barnes. But viewers and critics agreed it was never the same.
Well, you know, I think Suzanne leaving that show was a big loss. And, it would be like replacing George Costanza or Kramer. I mean, when you have an ensemble with such perfect chemistry, you cannot change one character without it just going kablooey. And it did in the case of Three's Company. Now, they went on, actually, for many years without Suzanne Summers, but it never really quite captured the magic.
At home, John and Nancy had 2 more children in the early 1980s, daughter Carly and son Tyler. And the honors continued to pour in, a star right next to his father's on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1983. And finally, after 2 nominations apiece, a Golden Globe and an Emmy in 1984. But by then, Three's Company had sunk in the ratings. It was canceled in 1985. After 8 years playing the same role, it was time for John Ritter to move on.
Once John Ritter became a star, what famous comedian did he track down hoping to appear on her show? Visit Biography.com for the answer.
Movie Central's got an awesome line.
In 1985, John Ritter learned that his show, Three's Company, was being canceled after 8 years. It was a blow, but it was an opportunity, too.
I think after 8 years, it was a relief. It had been, that kind of intensity year after year. Plus, he was working, the off seasons, making movies and stuff like that. So I think there must have been some sense of, this is over, I can catch my breath, I can look at my life and see what do I want to do.
John's first project after Three's Company was a TV movie called Unnatural Causes. He earned a Golden Globe nomination for his portrayal of a cancer-stricken Vietnam veteran who exposes the government's cover-up of Agent Orange.
You've been put on outpatient status for a non-service related condition. Your first return appointment is on Monday at 2:30 with Dr. Block.
Says he's a psychiatrist.
That's standard.
A shrink? What? I've got a psychosomatic cancer?
Failure to report will
I'm not in
affect
the Army anymore, lady. Let's go.
After the show, he began to get more attention as a serious actor, and I think that was something that meant a lot to him. I think he wanted to define that there were other things he did, and I think he enjoyed doing that and going deeply into a character and taking on more serious material, and he was very specific about the kind of movies he'd want to make and try to make a statement with everything he did.
Being liberated from a weekly TV series enabled John to spend more time with his wife and 3 kids. But his break from series television didn't last long. In the fall of 1987, ABC gave John a new show to star in, Hooperman.
This is a stupid television show. I don't want to do a television show.
They have a real judge and his decisions are binding. Plus, they pay you $500, which will not be applied towards the nominal fee you owe me.
I never agreed to anything like this.
He won Golden Globe and Emmy nominations for his portrayal of a San Francisco detective. But his decision to do a show that blended drama and comedy left some critics scratching their heads.
What happened with John Ritter then after Three's Company is that he just started drifting between genres. Is he a comedian or is he a drama guy? And then he does this show Hooperman, which was described as a dramedy, which further confused people because now the audience is really confused. They're like, okay, John, are you trying to be funny or are you trying to be serious? What's the deal?
The series lasted only 2 years, and again, John landed on his feet. In 1989, Blake Edwards of Pink Panther fame cast John as a womanizing alcoholic in the movie Skin Deep. It was a meaningful assignment for John because it reunited him with his former acting coach, Nina Foch.
Oh, I was so scared because Nina was, the source. She was the oracle at Delphi. You went to her for the answers, and she's going to be. She came in not as my teacher but as a colleague and said, "Let's go to work."
Hi, Mark. Can I come in? Hi, Marge. I'm sorry to bother you, but could we just talk for a minute? Sorry, I didn't see the suitcase here.
Just incredible, incredible work. Lovely, lovely, lovely work. Not many people can do the kind of physical comedy that he can do.
I had never had the pleasure of working with Nina before, but I was able to in this one. And if she's responsible for any of what John is. She can take a deep bow, and I know she is. She can take a deep bow from the waist as far as I'm concerned.
John's life was about to take a dramatic turn as a result of his next career move. On the set of 1990's Problem Child, John and actress Amy Yasbeck play a married couple who adopts a 7-year-old boy.
It's wonderful. We have finally been accepted. This parent crap is really paying off.
I can't believe it. It's a dream come true. A birthday party. Now we're actually going camping with our own son.
Not me, pal. I'm going to the mall to buy a dress for the party. Give me some money.
Oh. Does that mean you're not going camping with us?
Not on your life.
Oh, okay.
John and Amy eventually got involved romantically and fell in love. But John was still married to Nancy Morgan, the mother of his 3 children. When the story broke, it was emotionally wrenching for everyone involved.
I think it was pretty hard. You know, it was a dark time for all of them.
John and Nancy ended up getting legally separated. They divorced several years later. In 1992, John returned to the sitcom world in a show called Hearts of Fire. His best pal was played by an unknown actor named Billy Bob Thornton.
We'll go get a beer tonight. Maybe I shouldn't stay over here now. Hell, maybe people think we're in love.
He's one of the good guys. He's one of the people that you root for. He deserves so much. He's a kind-hearted person, a great soul, a great talent, and my friend.
Though John didn't know it at the time, his friendship with Billy Bob would lead to the most acclaimed movie role of his career. While they were shooting Hearts of Fire, Billy Bob was writing a little movie he'd thought up called Sling Blade.
I wrote the part for John in Sling Blade for him. I mean, it wasn't like I just said, hey, will you do this part I've written? I was working with him every day while I was writing it. See, John is a great actor. He always has been. I knew that because, you know, I was an actor too. So I could look at him and go, well, okay, I get it. And plus, in talking to somebody, you know, if you talk to John, just have a serious conversation with him, he can do drama as well as anybody.
John's professional life was about to go to the next level, and his personal life was about to change too.
You are watching John Ritter on Biography.
In it.
If he really was accepted as being the actor that he truly is, he'd be making $20 million a film.
As John entered a new phase of his career, his personal life took on a new dimension too, when at age 50, he became a father all over again to daughter Stella. A year later, he married Stella's mom, actress Amy Yasbeck. John's friends say it's been amusing to watch him with his young daughter.
She's totally, you know, stolen his heart. I do think every once in a while he has that comment of, oh, I'm too old to be doing this. But I think he gets the fact that Stella's going to keep him young.
John's also very close with his 3 children from his first marriage. When he and Nancy divorced, they resolved to work together and both take an active role in raising their kids. Their oldest son, Jason, is following in his father's footsteps, pursuing a career in acting.
I'll tell you that John is unbelievably proud of his son, and for good reason. I mean, I went to see, I saw this boy in action. He's great. He's also unbelievably good looking.
John's daughter, Carly, is a straight-A college student, and his son, Tyler, is a star on his high school baseball team.
I am the luckiest guy in the world to have 4 kids who I learn from and that teach me lessons every day, you know, about patience and responsibility and unconditional love, which is something, I'm a very simple guy, that's all I want.
I think he's enjoying his life more than he ever has, which is great, and I think he deserves it.
John continues to juggle fatherhood and a busy acting career. In 2000, he made his Broadway debut in Neil Simon's play The Dinner Party, sharing the stage with his old friend Henry Winkler. Soon after, John reunited on the stage with another longtime friend, actress Jenny Sullivan, in her play J for J.
He is, in fact,
A very funny guy. Last week, he looked at his doctor, Dr. York, and said,
"Hi, Dr. New York."
And without missing a beat, as his doctor, New York, walked away in surgical scrubs with his funny little shower-like cap on and paper booties, Brother John said,
"Looked like Bozo."
Dad, he not only made a sentence, he made a joke.
Since the 1990s, John has been a perennial guest star on various television shows, including Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Ally McBeal, for which he won an Emmy nomination. He won 2 more Emmy nominations as the voice of Clifford the Big Red Dog on the animated PBS series.
Hello, Mr. Gordo. I'm Clifford, and these are my friends T-Bone and Cleo.
And he's also appeared in movies, some good, others less so.
I mean, he's obviously gifted. He's a face. People still love him. So if he sticks to the right projects, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of him. It's when he veers off into these really bad payday projects that he gets into a lot of trouble. Stuff like Chucky's Bride and Problem Child 1 and 2. You've got to weed that stuff out if you're going to really have any kind of credibility in Hollywood.
In 2002, John finally got a shot to star in his own network series again. In the ABC sitcom 8 Simple Rules, he plays a typical dad trying to raise 2 teenage daughters.
This is nice.
Thank heaven.
You usually don't let me put my arm around you.
Oh my God.
His friends are delighted to see him back on a sitcom.
Like butter smeared on bread. Like peanut butter meeting jelly. Yeah, like a duck to water.
Working for an audience in comedy and in drama. It's what John Ritter has been doing so well for more than 30 years.
John Ritter should be on television. John Ritter should be in movies. John Ritter should always be performing. He's just good. I think he's better than just about everybody out there.
He achieved both comedy and drama superbly well at a very high level, and that's something that he should be very proud of.
Growing up in a showbiz family may not have helped John Ritter early in his career, but one family connection paid off just last year. Ritter's son, Jason, told his dad about a film he was auditioning for called Tadpole. Ritter would eventually become a part of the project, starring opposite Sigourney Weaver. But following in Dad's footsteps isn't so easy for John's son. He didn't get the part. Tomorrow on Biography, Paul